Hello, my lovelies. I'm Ginny O, the author with no last name, and today we're going to talk about Star Stable and Star Stable's problem management. Uh, Normally, now when I do a Star Stable video, I have myself as an avatar running around in the game in a pretty outfit on one of my nice horses, and I do a voiceover, and along with those voiceovers I usually have screenshots or some sort of notebook, notepad paper, or post-it notes, or of arguments to support what I'm saying as I talk. Now today I don't want to do that because I really want you guys to go and look at everything that Star Stable has put out media-wise since I actually kind of started making these videos all the way back in the spring of 2021. And then I did some updates in November of 2021, and here we are over a year later, and things are not really improving. So instead of you taking my word for it, I want you to go and read all of the blog posts, listen to the podcasts, whether you can find them on YouTube or Spotify, and watch the interviews with the game director Stacy Place, with the Star Stable Photo Club Discord girls, who are very sweet and very good at what they do. Please give them a watch. They did an interview in February with her and an interview just in December with her, which is what we're kind of prompted this video. And they also have done, a lot of my information is coming from different discords. You can go to Reddit, you can go to Tumblr, and look at the stuff that devs say on the Tumblr. Devs have actually done Instagram stories, so those you have to catch really quickly. But if you go on YouTube, usually somebody in the community has managed to screen capture them and record them for posterity type of thing. So I just want you to go, and I want you to look it all up yourself. Go ahead, fact check me, come to your own conclusion. And secondly, the reason why I'm doing this to see my face this time is because I'm not always sure I'm conveying the right emotion in my tone. So I want you to be able to look at my face, see what I'm saying, if I'm smiling, if I'm frowning, if I'm got my eyebrow raised, what type of faces am I making as I do this. Now, I do have a list of notes in front of me, and I really want to try to keep this to 40 minutes or less, but we'll see how it goes, so buckle it in. It's kind of a long one. So, because a lot of you are always going, Ginny, you're such a hater, you always see the negative. I try not to always see the negative. I really do want to point out what they're doing good this year, or did in the last year first, and not always be a Debbie Downer, I guess. So what's good is in the last year they've done more communication. So like I said, they had the interviews, there was the blog posts, they've done podcasts and the Instagram stories, and they've had the monthly roadmaps. So all this is really good. It means we're hearing more from the company itself. We're hearing from Stacy Place, we're hearing from art directors and technical directors, we're hearing from Ismail, so we know what's going on behind the scenes. So we're not sitting here going, why is nothing happening? What in the world is going on over there? Because around 2017 to, end of 2020, things really went dark at Star Stable, and it didn't feel like any progression was happening. So now we get some communication, so we know what's going on behind the scenes more, and that's good. So speaking of Ismail, they are refactoring the databases, which is absolutely necessary. So this means that they're splitting up the databases so things can be accessed more easily. This is behind the scenes work. You may not see as much in the front of the house, the front end of the house, you may not see as much smooth, it's going to take a lot of work to optimize it, but they have to start with refactoring the databases. They've added Qt widget tools, and that's a good idea if they are using them to create code libraries. That means they can do things faster. Are they using them this way? I don't know, but at least they have them. Their shaders have had a massive improvement. The water shader, the new snow shader, that was really cool. So that has really improved the overall look of the game, and shaders will take less computing power to do on your computer, so yay. Better animations in horse textures. They are really upping their game in their animations and in their horse textures. And, yes, the horses are still varying from time to time, but they are putting out more good horses over horses that the community absolutely hates and rejects. And lastly, in this interview with the Star Stable Photo Club girls, Stacy mentioned she's come up with some game pillars. Now, game pillars are for representing the values and the direction you want the game to move forward in. And usually there's like 3 to 5 of these. They tend to support a theme. She didn't say what the theme was, but she has come up with some game pillars. So the first game pillar is horse bonding, which they're trying to move forward with their horse bonding initiative. The second stage of which will be implemented in the first quarter of next year, she says. The second game pillar is community. No idea how that's going to work. And their third game pillar is story and fantasy, so content. So we'll see how much emphasis gets placed upon them, and we will begin to see more of this happening in the future. Now let's talk about the bad, because this title's is Star Stable's problem is management. So here's the thing. The more they've been talking and the more they've been communicating, the more they've been kind of telling on themselves. This is both the game director and the game devs. And, it's really rare for Johan to talk, so a lot of the stuff that I know from Johan is from 2021 when he was giving these interviews to celebrate the 10th year of the game and to entice Nordisk to buy more stock. And when Johan talks, he's usually parroting Frederick from all the way back in 2017, so take from that what you will. But they have been doing more communication. And unfortunately, the communication has been spread across a lot of social media platforms. And things like they're doing alerts about outages and glitches and stuff on Twitter. And not everybody has Twitter. Twitter is now a members only thing, by the way. And it's not being put out there on their public face groups, it's book groups, it's not being put out there in public on Instagram posts. So they're not being focused or consistent across all the platforms. They're not actually they've got this embassy Discord server that they're not promoting as much as they could. They're not, promoting who their game masters are or what their game masters do in the company. There are some people, I guess, that don't realize that Stacy is the game's director, that she is in charge of the direction and the way this game is going to move going forward, and she's partly in charge of things like company structure and getting, the communication flowing between teams and things like that. And some of this communication that they've been doing, it's either been way too late, they change something, and then they communicate they changing it instead of giving people a warning across all platforms on their news page in a pop-up in the game, or it's just making them look really incompetent. Like the Dark Rider update stuff that with the Instagram stories that did not make them look like they knew what they were doing, and the other, funny to them bug glitch stories that they're putting up on Instagram just makes those of us who have any knowledge at all of game coding or how the game industry works like back away with our eyes wide. Like, this is not funny, guys. This is serious. You should not be making jokes about this. I know you're making jokes so you don't cry, I guess, or something, but this is not something you should be sharing with the public. And a lot of things, while I was watching this year go by, 2022, and some of 2021 go by, a lot of what I do is I evaluate, is this being successful or is this being a failure based upon how the community responds. And I don't go by, oh, this is stupid, I hate it type of responses. I really go by, they're trying to address things in certain communities, like, the anti-bullying community, or the diversity community, or the accessibility community, or even simple game mechanics, or communities within their game, like the SSO dressage community. So really funny, I got on today, and there was like 3 clubs trying to recruit at Steve's farm all at once, and there was like 2 other clubs in chat recruiting, and I was just like, I don't even know where those 2 are. Are they like at the riding arena or something? So they're not. So when we see these responses of, oh my god, what have you done? Especially, let's see, things like the anti-bullying campaign, like, people were like, no, you're not helping matters any. This is not actually like a slur or something, and you're donating to a group that actually doesn't do anything. Or when they remade the riding arena and they took out the necessary dots on the floor of the riding arena for the dressage community, and the dressage community was like, holy crap, we told you we needed this. We even gave you charts and graphs, and why did you take this out when we said that was the integral part of our community? Now they changed the turning without warning. So now we have dressage communities going, we don't know how to do our routines because you've changed the way the horse functions on us without consulting us. With the character update, we wanted inclusivity, we wanted diversity in our character update, and it doesn't feel like, yes, it was a very early alpha, but it didn't feel like they really discussed within these inclusivity and diversity initiatives, they really discussed with the people what they wanted to see, and the stuff they got out first was not anywhere near remote what the concepts were. Okay, and so people were really frustrated and really disappointed and really angry about, you're taking this character we have that looks, yes, like an anorexic anime character, but now, she's even more childish than she was before, and we're not seeing any of the diversity and stuff you promised us. What's going on? And so most of these updates involve some sort of community outrage from different parts of the community that the SSO claims they want to engage with, and somehow manage to fail almost every single time. It's very, very strange. And so they're having a hard time communicating, even though they have so many PR people, like half the company supposedly PR and marketing people, so they have problems communicating with their players in their community base, but they're also having problems communicating within the own company, within themselves. So while Stacy is talking in these interviews, and she's talking about how she's doing this festival framework and stuff like that, and then we get these festivals that, like Halloween and the winter festivals, that there's a huge outcry from the players of, hey, this is totally completely wrong. Why did you change it from last year? Last year was fine. Stop trying to tweak things that work. And, they say, oh, we had this festival framework, but they're not. So the higher ups didn't, either communicate the festival framework in an appropriate way so that the devs clearly understood what they were supposed to be doing. And then, or the devs turn around and do things in secret and they don't communicate their plans back to the higher ups to get approval despite having these frameworks. It's kind of like, does anyone not know how to use an email? It's like, for instance, Stacy said for Halloween, she was gone during the time they planned it. And then she comes back and she and others have to figure out what to do to quote unquote fix the festival so people can enjoy it. But they did it, they didn't send her an email for approval or do basic math, basically. So it's great that you want to think outside the box. But before you implement something, you need to get approval for it and do a bunch of playtesting to make sure it's fun, that it's not tedious or grindy. And you can't do it within yourselves in the company completely. You need to do it with kids. You need to do it with people who, are actually going to be playing your game. The next thing I really want to discuss is the company structure. You can have a great idea for a video game, and you can have, lots and lots of plans, and you can have, all sorts of ideas. And if you don't have good management, and good management doesn't instill a good structure in your company as it grows, your game it's not going to flourish. And right now, the current company structure at Star Stable and the way Stacy talks about their future structure at Star Stable sounds like a complete and utter nightmare. And for just about everything. But for the main thing that we're probably going to talk about here is scheduling. Stacy talks a lot in the Stable photo community interviews that she has a very hard time scheduling people to work on different projects. And the way they are set up now as a company is based on the horse teams, plural, because a horse team is 3 people. So we have plural horse teams going versus everything else, okay? So I don't know how they know who to hire and what specialties they're supposed to be hiring the way they have things structured right now. But she says she has a very, very hard time scheduling projects because people are constantly moving around, and then you have people taking vacations, and Sweden has a lot of red days. And so she was talking, and she said the future structure of the company was they were going to break up the people to encompass the entire player journey through the game. Now, what she means, I think, she was not very clear, but I think what she means is they're going to separate the different portions of the gameplay experience into domains. So you're going to have a portion of the company working on logins, player registration and player creation type stuff. Then you'll have somebody who's working on quests and festivals, so like maybe we'll finally get a content team. You're going to have somebody who's going to be working on races, and you're going to have people who might be working on other end game content. You're going to definitely have people working on horse bonding. They're talking about redoing the inventory system, and they want to do a horse home stable customization system. So you're going to have a team kind of working on that. Just so different teams will be working on different areas of how the player interacts with the game. along with your horse teams. And to me, this comes off as just as chaotic, with just as little consistency and just as much inability to schedule as before, if not worse. Because you can't really focus on anything or learning to do one process in the system and get good at it so it's consistent when you even if you're in a domain, like a group of people who are all supposed to be working on one thing, but you're like 2 or 3 different teams inside that group and you're constantly switching up what you're working on. How can you, if so you worked on this little section of story, and now you're working on a festival, but somebody else is now working on the next section of that story arc. It's hard to be consistent. It's hard to keep the characters having the same dialogue tone and jargon and stuff like that. If you keep moving people around, then this is going to be, we already have a lot of characters they've seemed to have forgotten about, in areas they've forgotten about. So this is just going to make even more forgetfulness and, about characters and storylines, unless the devs who are working on this content and quest domain festivals like them. I mean, there doesn't seem to be a art style guide, and the employees are so used to the so many different various art styles in the game, they can't even see it anymore when their new stuff they're putting in doesn't match the Soul Riders. The Dark Riders don't match the Soul Riders, and it's just a mess. So this thing that they're doing, it's slowing down the entire game making process between the inability to schedule and people constantly having to switch gears and learn new skills or figure out what people did before them, and there's no focus on getting any project done, and it doesn't allow time to test systems before release, and it's just very, very chaotic to me. And, okay, I get it. I know. An art pipeline is boring. And an art pipeline is, you start with your concept art and your story outline or thoughts, and then you work that way down each independent department of your game. So you have a department of people who are working on creating assets. You have a department of people who create the textures for those assets. You have a group of people, all they do is animate. You have a group of people, all they do is, write code. Okay. So Star Stable doesn't have this type of system, so when they go to start a thing, there's like they can't schedule things because you have to go when you're starting a new project, you have to be like, ask each department, okay, how long is it going to take you to come up with concept art? And then we got to add in how long it's going to take the asset makers to make the assets and the texture. And that's how you set up your schedule. You've got X amount of time. You say you need X amount of time, so we're giving you X amount of time. Then you got to turn it over here. And that was way they'll know roughly, after doing this several times, how long it takes for one part of the game to start from the start to finish, how long it's going to take them through the art pipeline. And it's just, okay, I know it's boring. I know it's not, interactive. I know you're not going to be working on several different things, but it provides a lot more consistency to the game. It makes scheduling a lot less nightmaric, and you can focus on getting things done because you can focus on your aspect of the game and getting it out at the best quality, consistent quality. And they're not a small company anymore. They're not, 20 people in a room. It's a 300-person company. And, so when any company that's independent of big publishers that starts hitting 50 people, that's a big company for an independent company. And you're no longer wanting your employees to wear quite so many hats. You need to set up that art pipeline. It doesn't work as well anymore. And so I have, over the past year, only been able to find about 60 people working on SSO in SSE. That's like 1/20th of the current company. And I'm not counting the mobile team here. So I don't know how many of the 25 hires they've done in the past year are actually working on SSO, or if they're working on Wild Song, or if they're, PR things. But that's 1/20th of their company is working on their main game. And so Stacy did reveal, how many people were working on content teams and festival teams. And it's 5 people. So they have 1/12 or 1/6 of the game dev team at a time is working on actual content. So 1% of the overall company is working on content for the game at any given time. That's a really, really small number. Like, the writer's room itself should be 5 to 7 people, so that they can come up with the content, and then they would have technological people and artists who, would have teams themselves to implement that content, to create the races and create the mini games and other type of game mechanics for it. So, it's just management has to put those structures in place, and the structure that they're going from and going to both sound equally chaotic to me. Like I said, I know art pipeline is boring, but it kind of exists for a reason. And another thing I've really noticed is there is a lot of ideas. They have a snow flurry of ideas of what they want to do with the game, but there's an extreme lack of planning. Okay, so Stacy says before they can even go into discovery to how to implement an idea, to how to do an idea in Star Stable, they still have to pitch it to stakeholders first, which means their priority is this idea going to make us money? Not is it going to improve the quality of play for the player and bring more people in? So then after the stakeholders are like, okay, well, that sounds like a good idea, then they start going into discovery and planning and figuring out, can they even implement the idea? Because I guess they've had a lot of ideas, that they get to it and they realize that they hit a technological wall because the game wasn't built properly for it. So they would have to go to, back up and rebuild sections of the game to order to make that idea work. So what they were doing was a 3-month planning process for the game. They were working quarter by quarter, making a plan of what they were going to add to the game. And Stacy has decided that they're now going to go into a yearly planning of the game. Yearly. Just, 1 year. Well, they work so slow because they have a really bad structure. You would think they would have a 2 or 3 year plan in advance with, how they're going to do this, because a lot of the things that they do want to do involve this restructuring. They have to do all this background work. So you would think they would have a 2 or 3 year plan to, okay, we have a team completely focused on fixing the background work so we can implement these new mechanics and structures. And they don't seem to do that, because it seems that the end of 2023's ideas is still in planning discovery right now, because she does not know how it's going to work out. That's the home stable customization thing, by the way. So they are trying to do things like they want to do this inventory revamp without planning out how to do this stable customization, which is going to be tied really tightly to your inventory system. So I'm not sure why they're saying we're going to do a home stable customization and we're going to do this planning after we do the inventory revamp, when that should have been done in congruency at the same time, or before they planned their inventory revamp. They don't seem to have a clear vision of what they want. So they're not sitting down to execute that vision, and instead they're relying on social media trends within the community and whatever makes my life easier for things I do in the game on behalf of the upper management to decide on the direction of the game. There's no talk of game mechanics or map expansion or even map revamps for the next year. And everything they talk about for game mechanics is kind of so far off in the future, I don't want to bring them up because I don't want to hype them. Because they might not ever exist. Yes, they might technically be able to do it now, but now it's not going to show up till 2025 or later, so it's no point in talking about it when they're just so slow. If it was going to show up in the next 6 months, fine, but it's not. And a lot of the plans they do have are catered to their limited time battle passes, is what I'm calling them, aka the festival, and more cosmetics, the microtransactions with this inventory revamp. And so a lot of things the players want end up being done on Passion Weeks or Passion Fridays, and they don't have set projects to complete them, which then causes problems when devs leave and don't leave instructions on how to finish them, or how they did something so somebody can't pick it up and be like, oh, let me complete this passion project thing, you know. We could have had housing 6 years ago when we got our couch in our paint bucket, but that dev left and didn't leave any instructions on how to finish it, and they decided they weren't going to finish it because, well, we had to do an inventory revamp, and here we are 6 years later, and they're finally, you know, getting around to refactoring the databases and to do an inventory revamp. This should have been done 6 years ago. And as Stacy is talking, and sometimes as Johan gives his interviews, it's very clear they don't know how the teams do their workflow and processes they look like. You know, not only don't they have a plan, they don't know how the game system works and interact with each other and how the teams are coming up with these game systems. So when Stacy goes to talk about certain things like your chilling caps and the game economy, the devs and the marketing people can feed her a lot of what I call bull hockey about why things can't be done, or they don't have enough time to do them, or it would cause too much work for the customer service people, or they can't figure out how to get ideas executed on a bigger scale because they just don't know how stuff works. Um, and players really don't give a shit anymore, you know, so they're just doing things to work around the Jorvik shilling cap, you know, using their mailbox to hold Jorvik shillings, or doing lots and lots of archaeology, or duplicating items, and it's just, things could be fixed, but they don't want to do it. The last thing is they just, this ties into the last thing, is that they don't know what they're doing enough, that they're, instead of, you know, they're not listening to their community. They don't know the game industry standards for marketing, or they don't do industry standard levels of game design, or any kind of in-game testing with market groups. You know, everything I see is usually involved in how can we sell this game instead of how can we make this game better mechanically for the age market that we wanted to get it to. Instead, they rely on one, like a game dev in the department to play the games and decide, oh, our player base would like this, or our player base wouldn't like these mechanics. Instead of, you know, going to the community and doing an in-depth survey about, you know, what type of horse games does the community like, what type of mechanics do they want, and certain types of things, and then having a test group of the right ages play the game to, you know, play the games or play the mechanics for SSO to find out if they're fun. They don't know the idea of challenge. So they And so instead of having, good mechanical challenges to game industry standards, they cater the game mechanic decision, game difficulty to fit the needs of certain employees in the company who might have trouble with the game as it's programmed. So these systems, they don't have systems in the game that can be learned, and they find realism to be punishment instead of immersion, like auto slow and the cold tolerance. And because they don't do game industry standards for marketing, they don't know how to target a market demo. They have a market demo from 8 to 18, and an 8-year-old has much different needs than an 18-year-old. And these two different, that was a 10-year age gap, is going to end up with a lot of different wants and needs from an 8-year-old who wants cute, shiny things, and an 18-year-old who's gonna tend to lean towards more realism, or they're going to want more complicated mechanics in their game, or, they're gonna want to go a game that has some more violence in it, where you really can't put anything outside of cartoon violence in a game for an 8-year-old. And then they know things are broken. They know things are broken in the game. So you'll have the management know things are broken, and they won't fix them, and they won't, they know it. They won't do a plan to fix them because, it's just going to take so much work to do so. And this is also involving the Jorvik Schilling cap again, or the leveling cap. So the way Stacy talks about this, it kind of proves everyone's point when they say, if they end up raising the shilling cap and the star coin allowance, they'll just increase all the prices in the game, because that's basically what marketing and the game devs have told her, is that if we take out the Jorvik shilling cap and we increase star stable allowances, it's going to change the way people spend money, and all they have to worry about is money, money, money. And like Stacey's like, oh, Star Stable is not greedy, and it's just like, what bubble are you living in? No other game, no other live service game is increasing their prices at this time, but here you guys are increasing your prices, okay? And she made a big deal of saying, I had them change things from 10,000 Jorvik shillings to 9,950 because that way you can take the transport. It's just like, why didn't you just make the transport free? Because a 9,950 Jorvik shilling cost is not actually an improvement over a 10,000 Jorvik shilling cost. Okay, the clothing industry has been doing this for decades now. The pricing is at $9.99, so you think you're getting a deal when you're not. You're just saving a penny. So this is kind of like insane, the way they try to approach these problems. They're making problems for themselves and trying to sell us the solutions, as them. And the biggest question I have in all of this is what is Marcus B doing? Where is he? We have not heard from him since he was hired back in November, and he did his little blog post after he came on. And I don't know what he's doing, because he's the one with the experience, and he's the one who's worked in these other companies. And I mean, we have not heard anything from the creative director of this game, the one who's supposed to be executing the content and working with Oscar, who's over there in the art department, to try and, create a bigger world and a bigger map and change things out on the map and, create game mechanics. We haven't heard from him, so we have no idea what he's thinking. We just hear from Stacy, who says a lot, I don't know, that's in planning, aka I don't know, or I was out for that, or I don't know, lots of I don't knows, or she's very vague about what's going on. So, anyways, so if anything from all this whole lack of good management at Star Stable Entertainment explains a lot and also explains what's been going on with this character update. I mean, they've been teasing this character update for the last 3-4 years, and we were finally getting it sometime next March. They're going to do another hype beta test probably in January or February with just the ambassadors. Really? Okay. And it's just, they have not been planning. They don't talk to each other. They don't talk to us. They're not listening. They don't have any sort of clear goal or vision, or they don't have the proper research to do the mechanics, to, be able to teach kids something, even if it's like fine motor control or... So, while Star Stable has done some good things, what has not changed, or seemingly hasn't changed, is just the utter chaos that is the management. And they're not going to improve unless the management actually either learns to manage or they create a new structure in the company, or they hire on people who know how to structure the company, or whatever. Something... company management is going to have to change, and what the company wants, they say they want to make good games, but mostly what they seem to really want is to make money. That's going to have to change. They're going to have to go do what they say they want to do, make good games, before Star Stable Online improves as a game. Otherwise, if you've been paying attention to my channel, I've been playing a lot of Calico that has a 2-person team, and they spent a year doing bug fixes, and then in the next year they put in 25 new minigames and 6 new animals, and are promising a story content update. So somehow Calico is doing better than Star Stable Online with, I don't know, 1/1000th of the people. And I really want Star Stable to do better, because it has good bones. But good bones can't save a game if it's executed poorly. I hope this made sense. Thanks for listening. Take care, bless, and I will see you in the next video.